everyone. Welcome to the inaugural Fluid Life Unfiltered podcast. I'm Kim McWatt, Fluid Life Director of Marketing, and I'll be your host. Today we're chatting with Jeff Walkup, VP of Sales and Marketing, and we're going to chat about why our listeners should care about oil analysis. Welcome, Jeff.
Well, thank you, Kim. I appreciate it. Thanks for putting this all together. I was kind of looking forward to the opportunity to talk with you about stuff.
So, Jeff, how did you get involved in the field of condition monitoring and, in particular, oil analysis?
So let me kind of take you back just a little bit in my life and stuff. As you know, I grew up in a construction family. My father had a bunch of heavy equipment and stuff like that, back in the 60s and early 70s. So you start dating yourself. And with that, I worked for my dad for a long time. But back then, it was like kind of feast and famine, and you're a jack of all trades. So not only did we operate it and run it and have to go sell the business and do all the various things that you need to do to be a small business owner, but we didn't have these fancy maintenance contracts or anything like that. We didn't have the OEM that we could count upon. If things broke down or got fixed, that was us. And same thing too with oil analysis. Back then, people would do it kind of as a luxury type thing. It was kind of like a Eddie Bauer heated seats, and fancy heated mirrors and your steering wheel and stuff like that. And we did it because, we were told to do it and it was important, but we probably did it for the wrong reasons. We didn't really have warranty claims, things of that nature. We did it kind of as a necessary evil. And guess who that oil analysis program was? Yeah, you're looking at him, a young kid, 15, 16 years old. So as far as having adequate training and taking samples in the proper, correct procedure and locations and keeping track of it, for heaven's sakes, the computers didn't even exist back then. So if we took it out of a drain plug or if we beat a hole in a filter or just poured it out of the filter, that's what we got. And we would turn it in, but whether or not we got it to any kind of a lab to do anything, neither here nor there, neither said nor done. And then being able to get the results back, to act upon that, that was another story altogether. So it was a hit and miss at best, but that's how I got involved in it. And then as I continued to work and move about my career and all that, that was a big push. And heck, I was just thinking in the back of my mind, going back to about 1999, 2000, when I really got involved into it pretty serious as a professional. And so it goes back that far and that long way. And there's a big story about it. Even in like your engineering programs at school, they don't really make a big major emphasis push on it. It's kind of taught as a subset. And so you rely upon industry, companies that are out there that have done it for a long time. And that's how I got involved in it. And then little by little, realizing the importance of it and kind of fell in love with it, if that helps.
Based on your history within the industry, what do you define oil analysis as?
That's another good question, too. Well, there's a couple ways you can look at it. You can look at the fancy way that we would try to explain to a group of engineers and chemists and whatnot, or we can explain it to the people who are out in the trenches, the mechanics, the lube technicians, the millwrights, the people that are the planners, the schedules, the people who are actually out there doing the job. So to make it simple, to be able to look at oil analysis, you test for a couple reasons. You test a lubricant for the health and the life of the lubricant in and of itself that lubricates a component. Is the oil the correct oil, the right viscosity? Does it have all the physical properties and structures? Is it doing its job? Is the right kind of a lubricant for the in-service components? And then the thing that's really fascinating about it that I really enjoy is that you test the lubricant itself, for the forensics, if you will, in it, the wear anomalies. Is the equipment in question that's lubricating? Lubrication does several different things. Lubrication is obviously, it provides, the protective coating, and the lubrication to reduce the coefficient of friction in moving parts. It's used for the transportation, of power, for example, like in hydraulics, as that oil's pumped and moves implements so it can do its job. It cools surfaces, and then obviously it will transport, the fluid back to the filters that removes contaminants. And there's a whole microscopic world in there that's really fascinating. And then I always look at oil analysis too. We say it in the industry, but do we really believe it? We say that oil analysis is it's not just oil analysis, it's the lifeblood of multi-million-dollar components. And it's the lifeblood as with our own blood. And so we say many, many times, not only will I say it, other professionals in our organization, but other companies will literally say that anything that a doctor can do with blood, we do with oil. And then that opens up a whole gamut that you can speak to people, because now they get it. It's not just a necessary evil that you do, but you do it for a purpose and a reason, and to ultimately drive organizational goals, objectives, make your components last longer, make your lubricants last longer. And then obviously we live in a world that's very conscious about our carbon footprint and environmental impact. And so there's a plethora of reasons why you would deal with it, but even being able to speak to a particular audience, each one will have a different interest and reason why.
Interesting. That's a really good analogy that you make between the blood in your body and the lifeblood of the equipment itself. So now, based on all that, should every organization care about oil analysis, or do you think it's targeted only towards certain industries?
Another really good question. I can tell you've been in the business a while, right? But with that, that's a very good, valid question. Let's say, for example, and work with me here. Let's say you're a small independent guy and you have a fleet of chainsaws. You got 10 chainsaws, and you mix oil and go through it really fast, small volumes and stuff. Can you take an oil sample and send that off to a lab on your chainsaw? Well, the question is yes, but what value are you going to get out of that? Or you're a guy that has 5 mining haul trucks, or 5 additional dozers, or 5, rubber-tired dozers or graders. These are higher dollar, critical mass elements that are expensive, that have a big imprint on your organizational goals. How often you do maintenance? Do you have scheduled maintenance? Work orders and procedures. So you could take oil analysis on anything. We say, figuratively speaking, to our sales team that anything out there that moves, that has lubrication in it, is a target, but is it a wise target? Right. And what we should do as companies, as vendors, as consumers, as end users, is that we should say, does doing this application, is it the right thing for my organization, my end goals? Mm-hmm. So being able to understand, what it is you're trying to do. You've got a lot of equipment that have large volume sumps, that are high dollar, that are expensive, that are mission critical, their downtime is tremendous. So oil analysis, just like if we use the scenario back to what a doctor does with blood, we do with lubricants. It's one of the older technologies that are out there. Mm-hmm. There's multiple and many competing and/or ancillary technologies that each has their place. But, just a real quick down and dirty about oil analysis, it goes back to the 1940s and 50s in the United States, and they used that in the railroad industry. So if you think about it, back then, it was before the interstate road system, transportation system was there. So the railroads transported everything to and from East Coast, West Coast, North and South. And the just-in-time delivery concept that Walmart came out with, you've got X amount of products that are on the shelf, 2 or 3 in the back, 1 or 2 on a truck that's coming. You can kind of rotate that all the way through. Mm-hmm. The railroads were that. They were delivering it. And being able to make sure that those trains didn't break down, and to be able to get from point A to point B and be able to deliver their products. The world depended upon that. And so it started out there, and sharp learning curve, lots of mistakes that were made. But hey, with failures you learn, you know what I mean? A failure isn't necessarily a failure. You learn the way to do things right or wrong or different, make changes. And then it was brought into the military. The military looked about being able to do that, and obviously having a military background myself, I understand the importance of logistics and time sensitive, and we might even talk about time sensitive when you talk about sample turnaround time. But a lot of really good lessons were learned there, where today, the advances of technology and the amazing things that you can do, I can give you countless stories over a 30-year career where oil analysis has caught something, an impending failure, and you can get ahead of it. You can use oil analysis as a lead indicator opposed to a lag indicator, rather than reacting and moving from, a diagnostics mode to a prognostics mode, just changing the way you do it. But I think the bigger question is our world is inundated with information overload. We've got so much stuff coming at us all the time, emails and alerts and dashboards and sensors and all these other things, and people literally need to stop for a moment and say, what do I do with all this information? How do I prioritize? Tell me what to do and when, so that it affects my bottom line. And we use technologies and solutions to work smarter, not harder.
Based on everything you've said so far, what do you think is the most valuable aspect of oil analysis?
Absolutely. Well, there's a lot of answers to that question. So I'll just give you kind of a couple that I think is important because it's not just as simple as a one.
Right.
When we look at oil analysis and we look at testing a lubricant, an oil's number one property is viscosity. So if you were to say to me, if there was only one test and one test alone that I would take, and I might be stretching your question some, but if I took it that way, I'd say I would want to know what the viscosity is. I want to make sure that I've got a lubricant that can operate at that threshold in which it's designed for, whether it be an SAE or an ISO or whatever the case might be. But I want to make sure that I have an engine-compatible oil inside of an engine and not like a 680 Cinestoke oil, which bad juju. It's not going to work right. So knowing the physical capabilities, is it the right oil for the right application? Then the next part is to be able to look at, is it able to do its job? Does it have the right properties to be able to handle, one, the viscosity, but to be able to protect its additive package? And then obviously the contamination. So as viscosity is an oil's number one lubricant, heat becomes its number one enemy. So is it too hot? Has its chemical characteristics changed by its oxidation and its acid numbers and things of that nature, which begin to point to me, has it exceeded its threshold? Is it sheared? Physics 101, chemistry 101, whatever you want to call it, matter's neither created nor destroyed. So are those physical elements and properties still detected, and are they capable of doing their job correctly? So the condition of the lubricant is so important to me, but then I want to look at it as has there any types of contamination pathway that have entered into there. So let's say, as an example, Fluid Life has many, many mining companies, right? We're a 42-year-old business, and we've touched a lot of things out there. Anything literally that does move, we're involved in. But if we use just the sake of an engine, an engine, you're going to be dealing with dirt ingress, fuel ingress, coolant ingress, those types of things. And by testing that, you can tell whether or not some of these have taken place, which will pinpoint to the ways that you would correct it, troubleshoot it, repair it to make sure that anomaly is no longer going on. So a test for the sake of a test is just that. You have to have an end goal in place, but you've got to be able to sit down and prioritize what is it that you want to be able to try to do with this. If you're just taking an oil sample for the sake of taking an oil sample because someone told you to, or an OEM told you to do so, you need to stop for a moment and apply a little bit of common sense and logical circular reasoning.
Essentially, it's not only the test itself, but how you interpret the test and how you apply that to the ultimate outcome that's important.
Absolutely. Be able to utilize it so that it's part of the plan. I think about this many times, and as I talk to people, Kim, I talk to folks and they sit there and they feel like they're a victim. They've got all this data. What does it mean? How do I prioritize it? How do I do something with it other than just read a report and look at yellow, red, green, if you're not colorblind, right?
Oh yeah, totally.
And to be able to manage that and say, how do I apply this into my work? So companies they've got planners and schedulers out there, so they're running 24-hour-a-day operations, and they schedule from the beginning to the end of the year when something's going to get maintained, when they're going to change filters, when they're going to change the oil, when they might filter the oil. Plan things that they have to do. And oil analysis, provided you take those samples and you do it correctly, you get the right amount, it's representative of the situation as she works, get it to the lab in a timely manner. I mean, there's that onus on the owner that takes those oil samples to do their job, and then send it off to a lab in a timely way. The lab gets it, they maintain it with custodial changeover processes and procedures, and all of our Fluid Life labs are ISO certified, and that's very hard to get that testing. Consistency standards, you've been audited and you pass all of these specific things that show that you know what you're doing, and you can consistently do it over and over. And then that sample turnaround time. I cannot understress the importance of sample turnaround time, because if we go back to, if we take an oil sample every 250 hours, so apply that in a 24-hour scenario, you're looking at every 10 days, 2 weeks at most. And if you take an oil sample and it takes 5 days of transit to get to the lab, then it sits there on a dock and nobody does anything with it, and it takes 3 or 4 or 5 days for somebody to test it, and then somebody lets it sit back in the back in a process, kind of the good idea fairy pile. and that information isn't shared with an end user who can react to it and have an opportunity to dissect it, a little bit of medical triage, say I need to do this, is it a resample, was the data, clerical stuff accurate, on and on and on. There's far more to it than just a widget and push a button, somebody tells me what to do. And to be able to do that will coincide with their maintenance schedules so that you're not bringing a piece of equipment down. Because again, this might be a multi-million-dollar piece of equipment that might be operated in a 24-hour mining scenario or a nonstop railroad scenario or a wind turbine that only can operate as the winds in a specific area to be able to produce power. There's lots of individual things that affect the outcome of it. And we can't get that information to be able to plan when we have a regular maintenance opposed to got to take that down right now. I mean, there's multi-millions of dollars worth of lost production, revenue, unscheduled downtime, mean time between failure, on and on and on, that affect on the financials. So I tell people when they say, it's just an oil sample, I smile. There's a lot of smart people, that rely upon this all the time. And, I've been fortunate that I've been involved in many types of technologies, vibration, thermography, acoustic emissions, on and on. I've written white papers, been involved in scenarios, been on panel sessions, boards, committees, on and on. But by and large, if I can only do one thing, one technology alone, that would be one of the first ones that I could go to. And, people, the jury's out on it, and depending upon what particular agenda or narrative or business somebody comes from, they might say otherwise. But those are the things we can agree to disagree upon and just let the data speak to itself.
So the responsibility is not only on the lab to do things right, it's actually on the end user themselves as well. So it's a combination of both that make the program effective.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd even tell people too, obviously, I'm invested in Fluid Life. This is my company, and I believe very strongly what Fluid Life does. I knew Fluid Life as I was a vendor and a consultant for another company many, many years ago, and we worked with them, and we worked with multiple labs. I could spit out a plethora of those names, but one of the things that Fluid Life that I was really impressed by was, their attention to the detail, the ability to partner with people. You can go down there and you can go through if you could still find a yellow pages, right? Mm-hmm. Remember those old yellow things back in our day?
Oh, yeah.
Start dating ourselves, don't we? But you could go through a yellow pages and you could look for oil analysis testing labs. And you could kind of shut the page and put your finger down there and pick one out, right? And you go to it and, hey, here it is. Send it off to them. And that's fine and well and good. Is there a difference between their spectrometer and our spectrometer? I don't know. Is there a difference in their viscometer and our viscometer? I don't know. But one of the things that you want to be able to have in that partnership is somebody that's got your back. Right. Somebody that you can count on, that they're a high level of execution, a high level of trust and partnership that you know. So we don't want to just look for an oil lab that pushes buttons and spits out data, parts per million, centistokes. What does that mean? But somebody that's willing to work with us based upon, our organizational objectives, our execution abilities, what we can do about it, and then even to train us. But I think another thing that's important for a vendor is to hold people accountable. We've done our part. Hey, Mr. Customer, just to let you know, you sent this in and we've tested for you, and you got a problem here and you didn't do anything about it. That's not the lab's problem. It's you, Mr. End user. And I think about when you point fingers too. If I use this as an example, if I point a finger at you and I say you need to do this, the lab, and you do it, but I've got three fingers pointing back to me, which means that I've got to be accountable to those results. I've got to act upon them, and I've got to be able to share historical information and the outcome back with my lab if you want to be successful. And it's like anything, I think, in life. What you put into it's what you're going to get out of it. Exactly. Any kind of relationship.
Mm-hmm. So, Jeff, what kind of advice would you give to somebody that's just getting started?
Absolutely. That's another great question, Kim. I think. Thank you for that too. That says a lot. I've thought a lot about that over the years and the time. Oil analysis, sometimes people don't look at it as being all sexy and avant-garde. It's not new and fancy. It's not the latest and greatest, it appears. But even just in this short amount of time we've talked about that, and then the time that you've been here at Fluid Life, you've seen there's a whole world of unseen, microscopic things that people don't see, understand, or even know. if you went down the litany, if you will, of talking about the various tests and what it entails on and on. But that one piece of information I would tell people is come in there eyes wide open, a full heart to embrace things. I would say challenge your own assumptions about it, challenge the assumptions of others about it, right? Mm-hmm. Ask the whys, the whens, the wherefores. Why do we do this? What does it do? Be willing to receive it. Be willing to embrace it. Be humble and be teachable. I think those are some of the things that I would say to folks too as well. And then I would say the bigger part is don't look at it as a necessary evil, but look at it as a tool as we work in that world of working, smarter, not harder, and to be able to use it to make your life more successful and to drive what you're trying to do. Not only are people that get involved in maintenance and engineering and oil analysis and whatnot, are they involved with that, but to be involved with the business forensic side of things. For every engineer or every technician or whatever that values and understands oil analysis wants to do it, and they become proactive and want to do more and better and add additional things, there's going to be some business accountant that's trying to shoot holes in those things, right? So don't let budget be a thing that always drives you. Don't let price be a thing that always drives you. Look at the value you're getting out of the testing. Look at the value you're getting out of the company, and then put additional onus on yourself to be able to take that information and do something about it. Don't let it just languish and sit there, right? Shame on you.
The value you're going to get is how you react to it.
And the way we view things, the way we look at anything, is if we're a consumer, or if we're a business, we have to make smart and wise decisions that are smart for ourselves as individuals, decisions that are smart for our organization, and then have a competent plan to see it through. Mm-hmm. I think those are all good ways to start with it, and have a goal. Have a vision. If you're a young EIT, a co-op student, or you're a young fresh engineer, you're a planner, whatever your title is, and you've been given the role to champion an oil analysis program at your organization, look at it as a solemn responsibility. Look at it as something you can be proud of. That old saying, anything worth doing is worth doing well. And then to sit back, and establish for yourself, have a vision, and what do I mean by that? What do I want to do with this program? Look where you're at now, nothing, or barely get by Bubba, or whatever the case. Anything we're doing is we're doing well, and have a plan. Where do you want to be in 90 days, a year, 5 years down the road? And then from that vision, as you set that, then what's the mission? How are we going to get there? The strategy, the parts, the pieces, who are the players involved? Support it from the top, And if you're not at the top driving it, you might be the bottom driving it up. You can lead at 180 degrees. You can be competent in what you know, learn, self-learn, ask for training. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's out there. Fluid Life is an example. We do phenomenal training. Our MLA, MLT programs. All of our account managers provide training with our customers and our onboarding. We continue to do it. All of our business development people are knowledgeable and can execute the tools extremely well. And the power of knowledge. There's that old saying. I wish I was smart enough to say it, but it was about 3,000 years ago. My people perish for lack of knowledge. Which lack of knowledge, Webster's Collegiate Dictionary definition says something to the effect of is ignorance. Lack of knowledge. So we become ignorant about something because we've never done it, or we're fearful to try it or whatnot. But I would say take a program, set some realistic goals, the vision, the mission. What are the individual parts and pieces? How do we get there? Who does what? And then I think, too, that's really, really important, and I won't mention a company that I worked for a long time ago when I first got involved in it, but we used to say to ourselves, what's white and sleep six? And what that was, it was a drill and service truck, and it had welding machines on it and crane and stuff on the back, and the guys would go out there, they would go out to anywhere from a $40 to $100 million piece of equipment. And our entire mining operation was predicated upon how we moved those electric shovels and what we did with them, because that's loading our commodity in those trucks 24/7, 365 days a week. And gold right now, if you just use the illustration of gold right now, it's about $2,000 an ounce. And it was microscopic. It is microscopic, and it was back then. So you've got a 930-ton haul truck, which means it and its payload weighs 930,000 pounds, which is anywhere from 300 to 400 tons of dirt in whatever ore that is, high grade, low grade, medium grade, run of mine, goes to the crusher, goes to autoclave roaster, however you process it. So that truck and that truck alone can be just hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? And then you've got a fleet of them, and you've got these $40 to $100 million pieces of equipment out there that are tasked with loading them. And the white and sleep 6, the drill and service truck, where guys would go out and take an oil sample. Who cares? Nobody will ever see it. We never see these reports. Nobody pays attention. We do it because we're told to, right? Then we take the results from that oil sample from somebody that did not care, that took it, and we may base those maintenance goals and objectives on the results that come out of that oil sample. That's intellectual suicide if you think about it. So what we did is we stopped and we says if we invested in, we projected from the top on down how important this is. This is a part of our reliability and maintenance program, and we're going to do it come heck or high water. And we're going to invest in the people so that they know how important it is. We're going to provide them training, knowledge, know-how. We're actually going to interview the current people that are doing it and then reach out and hire other people inside the organization that want to be there, that see the value in it. And we're going to hopefully have our best and brightest people that we're going to teach them and train them the absolute best that we could, invest in them in the future, let them know how important it is. And we watched how that changed the outcome. It was night and day, let alone the millions of dollars that we saw differently and all that. So again, there's a lot of loose hanging fruit on that. And even the fact that there are companies out there right now that have been doing oil analysis for a long time, just because you've been doing something for a long time doesn't mean you're doing it right. And it definitely doesn't mean that you're capturing the most value out of it. And so there's a litany of things that we could talk about that and all that. But I would say, to summarize it back again, is to sit down and say, what are your goals? Define what success means to you with this program, and put into it and really value it and be proud of what you're doing and do, be the best you.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us today on our Fluid Life Unfiltered podcast, and be sure to join us again on our next one. We hope you have a great day, and if you need any additional information about oil analysis, feel free to go to our website at www.fluidlife.com. Take care.